Welcome to our event today. We have two fantastic guests in Matt and David. Going to do quick intros, going to do a little bit of housekeeping, and then I'm going to get out of the way and let Matt and David steal the show and do their thing. As quick intros, my name is Ari. I'm a product marketer at HubSpot. I work on Operations Hub and our RevOps programming. My pronouns are he, him, his. For the visually impaired folks, I have brown hair. I'm 5'9". I'm wearing orange headphones and a red shirt. And I'll pass it, Matt, over to you for a quick intro.
What up, team? My name is Matt Bolian. Pronouns are he, him, his. Visually impaired. I used to have red hair. Now it's like dark. It has a red flare to it, but not red. It's almost brown. And I have lots of freckles. I am about 6 foot, and I have a HubSpot t-shirt on, and I have like 8 of them. So I wear them almost every day. Okay, and I'll pass it over to David.
Awesome. Hey guys, David Quartemont here, founder of RevSearch. Pronouns are he, him, his. I'm also 6 foot, brown haired, wearing a blue shirt. So excited to get this going.
Nice. Thank you, team. Matt joins us from RevPartners, one of our fastest growing agency partners. Really great content. This is actually the second of a 3-part series with a couple of different kind of angles in terms of the HubSpot admin. Today we have David, who's a RevOps Recruiter, to talk more about that, what that looks like. The third part we'll mention towards the end comes later in April when we actually talk to a HubSpot super admin to talk about the role, all the nitty gritty, the ins and outs of what that looks like. A couple of other housekeeping items while we're here. I'm recording this. We will send out the recording and also the slides likely later this week or early next week. So no stress. The slides are coming out. No need to take frantic notes unless you so choose, as Matt and David talk. The other piece is please use the Q&A to leave your questions. So you'll see within Zoom, there's both a chat pane, which we've been using for our chatter and where we're calling in from and all that kind of thing. There's also a Q&A pane where you can leave questions and we can answer those questions. Please, if you don't mind, put your questions in the Q&A pane. That's the piece. That's where Matt will be working from to pull questions from. And it'll make it easier to kind of aggregate them towards the end. I think that's it. I'm going to get out of the way. I'm going to turn off my video and my mic. And Matt, I will throw it over to you. Thanks for being here.
Perfect. Art, thank you so much. I'm going to share my screen. We're going to get started. We're going to run through. So guys, thank you all for joining the second of the 3-part series on becoming a HubSpot admin. Today, in the first one, we covered what does it mean to be a super admin. We'll go, and then today we have David Quartemont with us, which we'll go into backgrounds in a second on tips from a RevOps recruiter. So it's great to hear my perspective, but like what's someone that in the day, every single day, all he thinks about and the only thing he recruits for is RevOps. And what does that look like to be a RevOps professional? So David's here with us. Welcome, David. We'll get into backgrounds here in a second. And so just this is David and myself that's on the screen. So just I am former military intelligence, used to be head of a RevOps shop, and a former Salesforce fanatic, recovering Salesforce fanatic, co-founders of RevPartners, have lots of HubSpot certifications, and the claim to fame is fastest hearing partner in HubSpot's history. Now we go to David that we're bringing on. David, will you take some time, just introduce yourself?
Yeah, absolutely.
Good.
Honored to be here, first of all, Matt. So, and welcome to everybody who's on. So yeah, I was born and raised in Germany. That's a fun fact I like to share. It inspired my career as an executive recruiter, and a lot of the global placements I've done have been, partnering with European headquartered companies here in the US, which is pretty exciting to come into to this field. So, and to kind of give you a quick foundation of how I ended up in revenue operations. I was very fortunate to place high-level strategy roles over the past 7 years that were a lot of times focused on CI, continuous improvement, Six Sigma, whether or not it was a plant that needed a turnaround or multiple business units that needed to be transformed. A lot of these types of topics of continuous improvement were involved in these roles. And I had the privilege of chatting with a lot of really smart people. And so getting a wind of revenue operations, I realized there's a gap. And I understand the strategic and the tactical skill set that the industry needs. And so that's why I went out and started RevSearch. So
perfect. And a little fact about David, he's not going to say it. is if you go and you Google RevOps, this is how I found him on here. You go and Google RevOps Recruiter. He's number one on Google. I think number 1, 2, 3, 4. And so just know that if you look up RevOps Recruiter, David comes up. That's all he does, all he thinks about all day. Thank you, David. Excited to have you here. I'm going to next, as we think about going to next, I'm gonna go a little bit more in here. David, if it's okay, I will give your value pitch as well, just so we can get through these slides. I want to make sure we get as practical as possible. So what RevPartners does is we help people execute RevOps as their departments. We hire lots of RevOps people. I've actually talked to David about helping me hire RevOps people. RevSearch delivers RevOps talent for fast-growing B2B SaaS. This is where they focus, and they don't do salespeople, they don't do marketing people, they do RevOps operations people into companies that have fast growing, that have a need for revenue operations. Okay, so this is the agenda for today. I want to get as practical and as useful as possible, as quickly as possible. To do that, I'm going to make sure we have a framework to cover the concept, what we talked about last time, the new air plus the HubSpot admin. And then the rest of the time, it's a discussion between David and I, getting his tips on what it means and how you think about RevOps for you to help upskill and know what that job is. I expect there's a lot of questions and answers, so please put them in the Q&A as we go through here. We will answer as many as possible to go through. Okay, so what I'm going to go over next is just the bluff. Here's what my expectation is we get out of today, and it's this. We have questions that are set up for, and we're answering these questions with David. So is what does it, like, from a RevOps professional, what do managers, people that are hiring for this job, actually think it is? What are they looking for? What do they choose when they hire? How important is the ability to read data in that? How fluent do you really need to be? And we go over a host of interview questions that David has seen that he preps his candidates for to be able to answer, and best use cases, and go over them, along with how do I upskill? Like, what's the most important parts of upskilling that David's looking for when he identifies candidates, but also that he sees people making the hiring decisions all at the end. So with that, I'm going to get into the concept of at the beginning. So we set the stage for why David's here. So number one is HubSpot is taking over the world. And I mean that as a joke, but also I literally mean this. Number one CRM, number one map, number one CMS, number 3 help desk by G2. It's a confluence of multiple different platforms on one, which allows people to move from large go-to-market tech stacks and consolidate into one. Fundamentally RevOps and that idea. And so understanding like all these use cases. So you have an old era and you have a new era for the mod, like that is less systems. So HubSpot is coming up more and more conversations as go-to-market leaders look to consolidate, which means they need people that understand the RevOps, specifically that focus on HubSpot. And RevOps itself, as we think about it, is actually, it expands multiple disciplines: sales ops, marketing ops, web ops, success ops, data ops, fin ops, and just understanding the holistic nature of all how it comes together as a RevOps professional. So if we think about the new era, here are the conclusions we came to last time. Conclusion: never been a better time to be in a HubSpot admin, because the fact is HubSpot is not synonymous with CRM yet. Salesforce is, but that conversation is changing. And so the hiring functions and the hiring decisions are also changing. They need power users on HubSpot. So the recommendation is start getting stinking good at doing RevOps in HubSpot. It's a good career move. Now, as we think about that, is that thesis. So with that, you start seeing communities like this pop up. Like there's never before been a community except in HubSpot, like third-party communities, which is a lot of Salesforce ones. So you start to see things like this. This is a super admin community that's coming up. It's like only talk about HubSpot, only do things in HubSpot. So it's just like starting to pop up. So we think about what is a super admin. It's really a combination of 2 different skill sets: the RevOps Professional, which David's talking about today, and a power user, which is on our next webinar. We'll have a power user talking about that skill set. And these combination equal an admin. So there are Salesforce admins out there. What we're looking for is a RevOps professional that specializes in specific software, looking to create HubSpot admin. So when you look at these definitions, we have 2 different ones: the RevOps Professional, which is like industry best practice, data coder, architects, go-to-market, product managers, and then you have the power users that understand whatever that, like how to execute tactically and integrations inside those. Putting them together, you get the admin today. And then this is what we culminated with. Here's the 5 stages of the HubSpot admin and how to start grading yourself and how do you upskill. Today, David's coming here and we are focused on the RevOps professional. Next time we're focused on the power user. So we're doing a deep dive into the RevOps profession from a person who only talks to RevOps professionals. This is going to be awesome. Okay, set the stage for David. Hopefully we're all excited. And we're going to get into it now. Okay, went quickly so we could all see it, but now we're going to slow down a bit. Okay, so David and I have had these conversations already and have kind of like started taking best practice and notes, but I'm going to just ask these questions and we're going to have a conversation with it. The question number one that just came up as we were doing this is, what do RevOps recruiters and hiring managers, and this is a question for you, David, look for in a RevOps professional? And we talked about hard skills. So let's just start from the top. You'd said process and change management. Like why is that important to hiring managers? What does that even mean?
Yeah. So if you go into your classic, CI methodologies, right? A lot of it has to do with driving change. And in order to achieve the objective of revenue operations, which is growth and alignment and, a centralized source of truth, you have to be able to influence people, right? So that change management piece. Can you take a group of people and lead them in a direction to have a certain outcome? And a process established leads you there, right? So it's this deep skill, and that probably goes into a little bit of what we're going to talk about in soft skills, which is the EQ piece, which is how do you work with people and how do you guide people, right? And to be cohesive.
So you say it's a hard skill people are looking for. Can you influence people that don't work for you? Is what you said. So it's like, it's a lot of times as RevOps is this, I'm assuming like, yes, you're going to have a team of people, but the many times you're talking to people that don't work for you. And so you're saying a hard skill is the ability to influence organizations.
Yes.
Okay.
So the people that, have their own agendas, right? Most of the time, cross-functionally, they're working with their own goals. And all of a sudden, depending on what level of adoption you have, and this always changes, but if you have a low level of adoption to RevOps, you come in and you disrupt, right? So what then? And so that's where this comes into play, is working with those leaders. And
so you ask people to get bad at their jobs because you're changing how they're working to create better databases. I think this goes to the next one. You said a hard skill, PM and agile. You used a cursor when we talked about this, get stuff done. Maybe you didn't, maybe I'm joking. Or do you post on LinkedIn all day? Like when you're like identifying candidates, what does this mean to you? And how are you thinking about this?
Yeah, I think this is one of the key skills that separate you from somebody who's just tactical and more strategic, right? Somebody who's more strategic in revenue operations, they have a framework that they operate in. And so the project management piece is so critical, and being able to, you have such a complex role, so many moving things, right, at all times, so many fronts that you're trying to identify inefficiencies. You have to be able to operate with a project management framework to be able to get things done, in time, in quality.
I hear that. How do I could say, I'm like, you're interviewing me. Yeah, I'm a great project manager.
No.
Okay. What do you like? It's great to have that. Like, what does that mean by have a hard skill? How are you identifying that?
Yeah, it's how are you approaching revenue operations? So that goes into more of the discovery piece, right? Where something that I look for in people is what are some of the situations that you've been in, right? What are some of the real life examples? STAR methodology, right? Being able to dig into and uncovering that use of that project management framework that you operate in. And I think that's how we uncover that, is how have you got, what was the task? What was the challenge? How did you get to the objective? And walk me through that, right?
So you're telling me if you talk to somebody and they don't give you the name of a methodology and framework they're using, you're likely not going to choose them as like the hire, like what you're working for. Is that what you're?
It depends. It depends. Not really, because, some people have their own RevOps framework, their own playbook, right? We do have hard methodologies like a PMP or some of these other things we'll talk about later that's very rare. People are not getting these certifications yet, right? So, but people have their own RevOps frameworks and playbooks that they operate off of, right? That actually are very similar.
Heard. So what I'm hearing is you're helping identify if someone has a framework. So if you're a RevOps and you're going to win the job, you'll likely have some framework, even if
Yes.
if you don't, then you're likely not getting the job. So I'm hearing you say.
Right. Yep.
The third one you identified, you talked about as a data analyst.
Yeah.
You said a data whisperer. What is that? What does this mean? What is the end state your clients are looking for when they hire you to find a RevOps person?
Right. So the data analyst piece is probably one of the main things that we've recently discovered as a top criteria for success in this role. And that basically means, are you coming in and putting together a revenue engine and systems and tools, and that's it? Or are you able to come in and look at data at a granular level and draw insights, right? So that's kind of that next level of, systems are great, right? You can put a tech stack together, it's fantastic, but you need to be able to get into those gray areas. You need to be able to do ad hoc analyses to identify, root causes and draw insights, which is really what leadership is looking for, right?
So how do you, we'll get into our interview questions. It's like, how are you? Yeah. That's great. It's like, I can tell you all day long that I am able to drive insights and I can segment data based on questions. How do you know if someone's lying or telling a truth here? Like, how are you validating this?
A test.
A test. Okay. So people, this is extremely helpful. I want to try to bring this as practical as possible. So you're telling me, like, if you are looking for a RevOps job, someone's going to give you, likely, they're going to give you a test and say, here's a data set, and you have to be able to slice, you literally have to be able to slice, dice, and validate. And so that's expectation.
Yeah. So it would be, the test that we're operating off of is very much focused on the sales pipeline. So pipeline metrics, KPIs, right? So it's a hard pull of data, and you basically have to figure out some of these metrics based on raw data. So VLOOKUPs, pivot tables, validations, right? Can you look at data in a raw state, and can you tell me what it says? That's the test. And that's not, that's something where we've seen a lot of failure, quite honestly, but also a lot of success at that next level, and that's where we get into that strategic, right? Moving from just tactical systems focus to more deeper in data. So
yes, that was good. So I like to hear this. We're going to talk a little bit more about that later. I want to say is I have the Q&A up. So Randy, I see your question. And I will, yes, the answer, and I have some, and I will give some resources after this on course curriculum. So the question is, David, and we're going to get to this, is, that's great. I understand I need to be a data analyst, but I find it challenging to find the course curriculum to actually be able to know. Oh, that went away as I was answering. Where do I go? Is there a community? Is there a platform? How do I get educated as a RevOps person? So I just know we're going to answer that towards the end, and I have some very specific thoughts on that, Randy. So I'm gonna, if we can move that to unanswered, or I'll just come back to it, Randy. Just want you to know I see it. Next is the other question was this PM and Agile and having methodologies. The question was what questions are you asking to validate those? Like, how do you actually know someone has a methodology? What was your question?
Yeah, so I uncover that through, most of the people that I work with at this point, they've had multiple roles to get to where they are, right? So just to set the scene here. So most of the candidates that I talk with at this point, because we're placing higher level roles, they have operated in different growth stages. They've had to get in and get their hands dirty, right? They've had to get growth through RevOps somewhere. And what we do is I go into discovery. I want to see discovery. I want to see diagnosing, right, from this person. And in that interview portion, you get to see true colors of how a person thinks, right? Do they think in this way? Do they think like a PMP, right? Do they? So that is it's all about diagnosing, diagnosing my client and diagnosing, a lot of times I'll talk about my own situation, right? My own business, or I just want to know, like, what does it look like when you come into a new business?
Okay, so we'll get to this question, but you'll give them a scenario that says, hey, you have a new business with these problems. What would you do? How would you think through prioritizing and affecting change? And through that question, they're going to have some paradigm, whether it's Scrum Prince to like a waterfall, they'll have some paradigm that they're helping answer and solve those prioritizings. You're just making sure they have it. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm going to move to this interesting. It says CRM Power User, which is funny because RevOps Professional plus Power User equals admin. And so what do you mean here? You put more than a casual gamer and you are up to date. I added, think HubSpot 2020 versus HubSpot 22 because they're so diametrically different. What do you mean? What's the checkbox here? What are you looking for?
Yeah. So we have this. If you're looking at the industry, and we're obviously I think everybody's discovering this right now in RevOps is, what do we actually need, right, in these people? What level do we actually need? Does everybody need to be certified in Salesforce or HubSpot or whatever CRM, right? Do we actually need that? Or do we need people that are power users, right? People that can stand up the system, right? That can architect the system. So, and that's something where, if you're hands-on in these systems, that's what I'm talking about. It's experience, right? As opposed to having, I would say, like on the Salesforce side, that the certificate is something that, that they've been pushing for a long time. But quite honestly, I don't look for that. I don't look for that as a hard criteria. So I think for me, if you understand CRM, but don't get me wrong here, power user still means current knowledge of the system, right? This does not mean you knew HubSpot 3 roles ago, or you knew Salesforce 3 roles ago, and you're like, I get it, but because it's always changing, right? The system's always changing. So I hope that makes sense.
That's helpful. So you're just asking, it's pretty understood. This is a checkbox, but it's not, especially if you're doing a higher level role, you're not getting, do you know where the button is for this thing? You may say, you're asking more strategic questions, and then you're getting in to understand if they're up to date and the capabilities of the tools.
Absolutely.
Okay. This next one is integrator plus data architect. And what we have, and I'm going to read these out. So we have, it looks like, if I'm summarizing this, it's, can you create, I like the second, can you create a centralized place of truth? So like RevOps fundamentally, and if this goes back to our RevOps Manifesto webinar, it's like fundamentally RevOps is taking multiple databases, putting them into one database to answer questions. And so you're saying, can someone do that? That's a pretty difficult thing to ask of someone. How are you even judging if that's?
Well, it's all about the outcome, right? I think it's based on facts. A disparate revenue engine doesn't work as well as a centralized revenue engine, and that's what I press into with candidates is, what have you done? How did you get there? It's always kind of the same process of, walk me through. I want to know how you thought about these things. How did you start to connect the dots? How did you move out from your CRM and start to integrate?
So this might be questions about, because if you're interviewing me, it'd be like, hey Matt, talk to me what you were doing at a 1 million AAR revenue, or when you came to the company, and then how did that evolve over time as you got to $20 million AAR? And then, like, what were your thought processes? What would you do different? And so is that how you're asking those questions?
Yeah.
Okay.
And another thing I look for is, because really the success in this centralizing is, how are you looking long-term? How are you looking at long-term goals, right? And keeping sight of the long-term goal of where the company's going. And you're doing the tasks that need to be done today, right? And you're not losing sight of either one of those, and you're balancing that. So that's kind of a key thing that clients are looking for, right? Because they're saying, we're starting here today, and I don't just want you to maintain today. I want you to take me here.
So looking for people that already have been there before, which is hard sometimes because not very many people have been there before, which we'll get into how we upskill, which I think is like one of the fundamental questions of like, how do I upskill? How do I learn best practices? How do I get there? We have soft skills, high EQ. We talked about that a bit. I'll skip over that because we got a lot more material and not a lot of time. You put some nice to haves, low code, SQL, coding languages. What do you mean by nice to have versus must have?
I think they enhance your skill set and help the company not have to outsource, right? or bring it or use an internal resource. It all depends on the growth stage of the company, right? I deal with a lot of early stage companies, so they don't have the budget. So, if you can have a more holistic skill set on the technical side, it can only come in handy. But a lot of times the strategic roles I place, they don't require that portion, right? The back end portion.
Well, this is helpful. I'm going to go to our next slide just as we go more questions. So forgive me, I don't know what those there. We have the two that we talked about was being data fluent. Like how data fluent do you actually need to be? And so it goes into that coding, like, and you mentioned this and you said good enough. What does that mean? Good enough to, what does this mean?
Yeah. So it basically means, it goes back to my earlier point of, can you analyze a data set and tell me the story, right? Tell me what is in the data. What is the data telling you? And that requires, that analyst skill set of, Excel skills. Quite honestly, it's a lot of advanced Excel skills to be able to do that. I was talking to an analyst the other day, and he was walking me through kind of the whole journey, right? Full funnel, and saying how he uncovered some of these inefficiencies and the business was suffering. And they ended up doing analyses, right? Pulling actual data and looking at it and figuring out, oh, wait a minute, there's a product issue over here, right? We're having support issues. And so that raw skill set of, you can dive in to Excel, right? And
I'd add to this, in my mind, Excels are nothing more than tables or relational databases where you know the primary and foreign key. And so you can join tables, do pivot tables, dedupe, validate data, visualize databases in your mind so you can put those together. So that's when I hear that, that's what I'm thinking about. You don't actually have to know how to code, but you must be able to join tables and see relationships, like maybe table to table to table. Okay.
Right. And the change, what you start seeing is, and we talked about this yesterday, is when you're at a smaller growth stage company, I don't know, Series A, just about to hit, Series B, you just don't have all of those. You don't have the department fully centralized, fully separate yet. Right. But what happens over time is, as you grow in revenue, and this is what we're seeing in these fully baked out revenue ops functions, is you start to see functional specialists, right, in these different areas. And that's where people start to really deep dive into those areas, like analytics.
I like it. You said we had this come up in our discussion, which, well, this is a poorly worded question that I wrote here, but is there let's take out the which, a RevOps discipline that is more important than another, when that you have found in hiring? And your answer was yes. And I was a little surprised. What does this talk to me? You're saying, especially in this, the HubSpot environment, where it's like where most people are born into marketing ops.
Right.
You have a sad message.
I do
for us, but a good one. One full of hope.
One full of hope.
Okay. So talk to me.
I think, well, I know from experience now that, companies, where does it start? That's the big question. Where does it start sales ops, especially in early stage companies? If I look at my own business, that's where I go first. That's where everybody starts focusing for growth, right? Is sales. And so knowing that, that's influencing the whole hiring conversation, because, CEOs are looking at and going, we need somebody there now. We have a bunch of sellers breaking processes. We want somebody to standardize there first, right? And so this goes into, so here we are in an interesting conversation because we have RevOps and we have sales ops. And I think there's still people that are saying sales ops is RevOps and it's all the same. But the reality is it is different, but it evolves, right? So that's what I'm seeing. So
David, here's what I'm hearing. I like to break this down in a very practical, very easy to
Yeah.
consume manner.
Go for it.
If you're not good at sales ops, you would not make a recommendation for when you're hiring RevOps leaders. Is that what I'm hearing you say? That is that true?
You have to have some skin in the game there. Yeah, you have to have had your hands in the pipeline.
You're telling me if you don't know sales ops and pipeline metrics and best practices around close one ratios, MQL to SQL conversion, how to do account planning, how to do sales capacity planning, how to run commissions, that it would be difficult to get hired in a RevOps position. Yes or no?
With my clients, yes.
Whew, man, that's like, I'm just gonna hear it because I think it's important. It's not that marketing ops is not important.
No.
Because understanding funnel metrics and website conversions and A/B testing, it's just when you think about as you go into executive roles, is what boards are asking you is what's your revenue? And so it's just like as a point is, I'm just giving this for RevOps people because I'm hiring RevOps people too. If you know sales ops, you're more likely to get hired than marketing ops. You need both.
Yeah.
They're good. But what I found, even from me hiring people, this is what I end up prioritizing hire.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going
Can I
to
add something to that really quick?
You can add whatever you'd like, David.
And just to make sure, because I'm sure there's people listening going, well, is sales ops just RevOps? And I just want to say, no, it's not. It starts there. And what I'm seeing in the roles that I'm hiring for is leadership is bought into the concept of revenue operations, but budget requires somebody that is there first, right? And then it evolves out, and then you start have that cross-functional alignment from that position. And then over time, what happens is there's an inflection point in the growth stage of the company where now we're building this thing out, right? That's kind of what I'm seeing. That's the progression that I'm seeing.
Okay. I see some questions, and I just want to answer this one because I think I saw it being thumbs up. I'll answer all of them towards the end to make sure we get through them. It is, but this is from, and I can't read the full name. I'm just going to read the question. It says, but RevOps is no to Excel spreadsheets, right? Or did I miss something? I'm going to respond to this first, David, and then I'll let you. So, yes, it is no to Excel spreadsheets, Google Sheets. And Excel spreadsheets and Google Sheets are the death of RevOps if you let them live for too long. However, there are certain circumstances in which they exist. Number one, when you are doing recruiting, because you can't, it's really hard to put something into your instance, you have to make up. And so fundamentally a CRM inside HubSpot or Salesforce or Pipedrive is nothing more than an Excel spreadsheet. And so if you know one, you know the other. Number two is sometimes you just don't have the data in one consolidated place yet, but you still need the answer. So there's where you're going, CRM in all one place, but you haven't been capturing the data. And so you have to move to a spreadsheet. Just know you must be actively trying to eliminate that Excel spreadsheet or your CRM will die and your adoption will die. That's my answer. So like you end up having to be good at being good at Excel is actually also being good at a CRM. Very synonymous. David, would you like to add anything?
It's rows and columns, right? I mean,
Yes.
that's what we're talking about here. We're talking about a CRM in its most basic form. I agree with you. I think, systems are amazing. They're awesome, but they're not perfect, right? So there will be situations where that is required. And especially at stages where you're not there yet, right? You're in the early stages and you're having to fill in those gaps and you're having to look at data, right? You're having to pull that data. So yeah, is it no? Yeah, it's no, because you want something that is cohesive, right?
I'll say this differently because I'm going to make this practical is if you are not comfortable in Excel or a Google Sheet, you will have trouble doing a RevOps job because fundamentally you will have to always do an export and then import something back in. And you're constantly importing and exporting data.
Yep.
And that is also like integrations. Okay. I consider that answered. I love what Roy said. It is. RevOps is also, we're fundamentally spreadsheet killers, but to be able to be a spreadsheet killer, you must understand the spreadsheet so fully that you can integrate it into your CRM, which means you must be really good at it. Okay. I'm going to as we keep going, love the conversation as we go through this. Okay. Discussion. You've said this before. I just want to say it here is how does RevOps skills set change from a seed to / Series A company versus a late stage pre-IPO company, which you've placed people for both. So talk to me. You put here, you kind of set two different phases. Talk to me through these, starting with the army of one, as you call this.
Yeah, that is the army of one. That is what everybody is trying to say no to nowadays. But I think that's startup life, right? That's what I'm seeing. People that come in and they are so inquisitive, so curious, they're able to bounce many different things. That is the role we're talking about here. And that's really, we'll talk about it down there a little bit later, and how you really get leveled up over time is you start in this position. You start somewhere in a role, right? An analyst role, an admin role, and you say, what are we doing over here? What are we doing, right? You're active in your learning, and you're exposing yourself to different areas of the business to get that holistic skill set developed. So with that being said, this is what I'm seeing most of the time is you see a role that, and again, that inflection point is kind of where a lot of the director level candidates now are, because they realize I'm inundated, right? You get to a point in that growth where you just like, I am just doing support tickets all day long, right? And I can't get stuff done. I can't be strategic anymore. And that's a reality. But it still starts there. And so it's building the blueprint, right?
I'm going to interrupt. So we have this. So I'm hearing you have your army of one around that 0 to 15. Mm-hmm. That's where you cut your teeth. The observation here is like you've seen from you just talking to lots of candidates, there's a burnout. And then they want to be moving towards the centralization of the RevOps department, having headcount, more functional specialty and process specialists. And it goes to this question that was down at the bottom, which is what should a candidate like? So consider this new companies, but also like their current employers, like the current places they're at. How do you know if someone truly believes in RevOps? That's what this question is. So like, talk me through that conversation and what you're thinking about.
Yeah. It's always top to, it starts at the top, right? I think I've seen RevOps done in different ways. I think companies are trying to figure out how to really build out this function. I've seen it completely centralized, separate, right? Supporting all areas of the business. And then I've seen it housed in one of the functions and working with really smart functional leaders to do RevOps. So that I think it really starts at the top, and you have to figure out, and I think that's what people are facing is what today is today, but what does 2 years look like from now, and really diving into that with leadership and trying to understand and read the buy-in, right?
We'll make it very practical. We're getting theoretical here, which is theoretical is, hey, what does 2 years from now look like? Great. How does someone know that leadership is bought in? So you've gone through here. There's some questions. Do they consider RevOps a strategic function or a necessary evil? One is a cost center, one is a driver of revenue. How do you know that? And you have some questions here, and you said this thing about milestones and give an example. Walk me through that. Like, how are you actually, because in many ways, when you're working with companies, you're asking these questions before you work with them because you want to know this answer. Well, how are you doing it, and how do you recommend candidates do it?
Yeah. I would say during the interview process, really, when you're talking to each of the functional leaders, when you're talking to the CEO, if you get that opportunity, present a business case, right? You most of the time, people know as a RevOps leader, you understand the evolution of this role. You understand that you get to a certain point and you need support. So pitch that idea early, the earlier the better, right? And see what that feedback is. And
so
if
I'm
it's,
going to make this very practical, David. We're going theoretical again. Milestone. What I'll answer this so we can get to it.
yeah,
Is
go for it.
just milestone is this is my recommendation. I hear this is what David has answered, and I hear him saying it is there's a milestone inside of a journey that you've like, when will you invest? And it just needs to be very specific, you need to be very blunt.
Yeah.
When will you invest in our second headcount? And giving them examples so they can answer this question better. So here's an example of a milestone. Do you plan to invest in sales? And they're going to say, yes, we're going to grow from 2 to 20. And I'd be like, great, that's so exciting. I can love to support that. And we need to be able to reduce friction. At what point will we add our next RevOps resource based on that headcount?
Yeah.
Their answer to that question will let you know if they think it's a necessary evil or a fundamental strategic asset they're going to use to scale the question. So
that's right. Thanks for answering that, Matt.
I just want to, I want to make sure we're bring it down very practical.
Yes.
And this is exactly what you asked. Okay. So next up is, I'm going to go through this because there's a lot of questions, David, and I'll point some of these. So what questions must a RevOps candidate nail if they want to stand out above the crowd when they're answering? And so this helps you understand what it means to become. And so what we got, and we'll go with this, is they need to be able to answer holistic versus very functional. They must move past theoretical and be extremely practical with outcomes and why they mattered. So here are the questions, and I'm going to just go through one that I think we talked about, mentioned. Question you told me you hear, and it's like really good. What is your ideal tech stack for a scaling company? Talk to me. Why is that an important question, and what are you looking to hear?
Yeah, I'm really, the biggest thing I'm looking for is have you built a technology roadmap? Have you planned out a roadmap for a previous company, right? And being able to walk through that and how that plan was then executed, and why, right? And the impact. Again, it's always about the impact. So that's what I look for, is the types of systems. Are you just throwing systems at a tech stack and calling it a day, and you're just getting the best and brightest, or are you actually going at it in a lean way, what matters most to the business, right?
I'll add to this, as I ask this question a lot when we're going through, is if I ask what is an ideal tech stack, I also am looking for, do you understand the 6 fundamental systems that are always there? So you must say the word CRM, marketing automation platform, sales enablement, CMS, sometimes visualization. And then others might be your database or where you're getting your leads from. It's you just got to be there's some that no matter what must be there, and will just always be there from day one. And so you need to do one that is a current top 3 in a category. So what's great about HubSpot, you just put HubSpot, but you need to know what's not HubSpot and how you're integrating with it.
Yeah.
So one of the other ones I like that we're talking through that I thought was really important, which we have not talked much about here, is, did you achieve adoption? And if yes, how? And if no, why? And the ability to answer that question. Walk me through why that is such an important question.
Oh man, this is the crux of all of what we're doing, right? Adoption equals success in RevOps, period.
First off, what are we even adopting? What does that mean?
Right. So, as a RevOps professional, you're developing a plan, you're rolling out processes, maybe changing processes, right? And then you utilize a tech stack to enable those processes, make them come alive. Is everyone doing what you need them to do so that the data can be trusted? That's it. Because data, a company lives and dies on data, especially now. So if that is not there, you've not done your job.
So you're telling me adoption is the most important. It's the fundamental good. The adoption, are people adopting the processes? That is blood flow.
Oh, love that. Love that. Yes. Yes.
I thought I like to add to this when I'm talking about adoption is how do you ask someone about this? The question is, where did your leaders get their source of truth and why. And just it's help. So like if you're a really good RevOps person, you're forcing your leaders to go inside their CRM, or you're going to say, I use a visualization tool like Tableau or Looker, where, and it comes from this. And so it's like those type of questions are really or like, did your VP of sales brief from an Excel or from their CRM during their weekly calls? And so I'll ask questions like that to like really get to adoption.
Yeah.
The next one, I just think this is, you have, what is your company's churn rate? It seems very specific. Why is that a question that you think someone needs to be good at?
It's one of many, right? I mean, we put these down here. I want to make this clear. When I talk to candidates, I try to be as holistic as possible in my interview process, right? So I want to uncover every stone, and I want to know by this question, you're able to tell me, that you are actually holistic. You are involved in what's happening with your customer base, right? You understand what's going on. And it's a simple test to say, did you know that number? Were you in, like, did you do something to improve that number, right? Which goes into another question, but it's all discovery. It's all the why behind everything, right? That's what I'm looking for. And so CS, right? We have questions on the marketing side to just gauge who are you partnering with, and are you actually looking end to end?
So you could replace that. What is your company's close one ratio? What is your company's MQL to SQL conversion rate? What is your company's X? So you're asking sales metric questions and some marketing questions to help understand what's their breadth of knowledge on that.
Yeah.
So there's a lot more. We have 10 minutes. I'm going to make sure I'm moving. First off, we have enough time to end, but also questions, answers. So we have some questions. So I'm going to make sure this is a question. I want to cover this very quickly. Now, because this is what we talked about, because I think it's important. You say, I want to land a RevOps jobs. What should I do? I want to jump from where I'm at and go somewhere else. And we talked about this, and it always comes up. How do I upskill? What certifications should I get as a RevOps candidate? So this was one of the first questions asked that I'm just going to make sure I can get to that we have answered. And so this is what David put down here, which is you need to get a PMP, which is a project management professional, Lean Six Sigma, design thinking, CRM certifications on HubSpot or Salesforce, advanced Excel certs, or you do some SQL training. The question I want to actually and so we have some post this, we'll go into, I'll give some exactly how to do that, where to go to. I want to go to the next question is, how important are they really? Talk to me here.
Yeah, I think, and I covered this a little bit earlier, but what I see, in most of my candidates, I will say this, most of my candidates do not have a Six Sigma green belt or black belt, right? It's just not a thing yet. Is there value in having something like that? Does it give you a new view, a holistic view on your org? Yes, it does. And it will help you hone into those skills, right? The process improvement skill set and the project management skill set. I think a lot of these are probably similar in nature in what they're trying to achieve. But at the end of the day, experience trumps a certification. And so if you are in a junior role, if you are sitting in go-to-market, learn, ask questions, make yourself available, get your hands dirty, right? That is the way to develop that holistic skill set and truly understand end to end. So I think, certifications are awesome. They're great. It's not everything.
I like it. Here's what I heard. Matt Zimmer, is Six Sigma still a thing? I'm going to just say yes. In fact, a lot of RevOps leaders are starting to say RevOps and Six Sigma are almost the same thing. One's applied to manufacturing, and one is applied to sales metrics. That's a conversation I see a lot. I'm going to add to that is certifications amplify experience. So as someone who does hire people for this, I love, you give me a cert, throw it in my face, I will eat that cert up. I love it when you got it. But you better also be able to answer the questions that are like, why, what was your churn rate at your company? And what did you, Why was it that? And what did you do to solve it? So you got to be, but certifications, if I was choosing between one or the other, certs will put you and help you get hired. So
Absolutely.
do them, do not ignore them, or you eventually be left behind. Because I've seen more and more candidates start having them. Okay, we have 7 minutes. Let's start. This is just my last slide here. This is my question and answer slide. I'm gonna go through questions. I'm gonna answer them as quickly as possible to pick them. So one of them is Scrum. This is from is Scrum Prince 2 and Google PM certificate enough? I'm gonna answer that for us. Just say we talked about the certificate. I'm gonna say actually that's not enough, but it is enough all at the same time. It's like you need to have a methodology. And if you don't, those are really good ways for you to start thinking through so you can answer questions. But you always need to be upskilling. So like, is it enough? Yes. Will it always be enough? Maybe not, especially depending on what role you're going for. I'm going to keep going. Question. From my point of view, becoming a HubSpot admin implies that we are capable to manage tools and functions on HubSpot. For example, we are an early stage. We are on the early stage to set up marketing automation in my company. And I'd be the person who will most likely do this as I'm looking to get deeper and deeper in HubSpot tools. Am I wrong to understand that becoming a HubSpot admin means in charge of all kinds of functionalities and tools in HubSpot? What's your response to that, David?
I would say if we're talking holistic, yes. I think you need to have your hands in all the things, right? I mean, is that the way I understood the question right here? It's asking, do I need to be in charge of all?
Yeah, I'd put, because I think it's very important. This is why I did the concept at the beginning. There is the RevOps Professional function that David's here talking about. And then there's the power user portion. And so when you're getting into, and you're now accepting a new process, marketing ops, and you getting good at marketing ops makes you a better RevOps professional.
Yeah.
Getting better at HubSpot makes you a better power user. And the combination of those makes you a better admin, makes you a better, so I recommend, Fabian, that you look at the stages of a HubSpot admin. It helps you walk through that and how, what are the gates you need to be able to say, I'm now stage 2, stage 3, stage 4. Okay. Next question is we have 4 minutes, is do you see a RevOps tech consultant, which is like a tech stack integrations, as being a relevant, valuable resource and different from an overall RevOps consultant? If yes, no, why? I'm going to answer this, take my 2 cents. I think they're the same thing. A RevOps tech consultant and a RevOps consultant. We talked about the army of one, and then you get a team. And so like what RevPartners does, as an example, is we say we democratize revenue operations by putting the tech and the strategic per consultant on the same department, because as you grow to 15 million AR larger, you will specialize. One will be like the integrations person, the other will be the strategic go-to-market and the translation. One's business requirements, one's tech requirements. But if you could do both, and this, I go back to that HubSpot stage that I talked about, that's the unicorn everybody wants. So I would do both, but they are different as you grow, as companies grow larger and larger. David, anything you want to add? So we have 3 minutes.
Yeah. I mean, the main thing I want to add is the earlier stage, right? If it's a true build out opportunity, that role is gold, right? Again, you distinguish between the technical depth here in CRM, right? You have varying stages of technical depth, and sometimes you need somebody who's specifically focused on tech. And, I've had clients that have said, look, we need a deeper level understanding here of integrations and initial build out, because this is all from scratch. We have nothing, right? So I do think that's goes hand in hand. Yeah.
Okay. We have time for one more questions. As a point, we're taking every question answered here, and we will provide it in a feedback in an email or some downloadable format after this today. So if we don't get to your question, no, we will provide the answer to it. The next question is from Sydney. The questions that come up in a hiring seem to be anchored towards existing RevOps professionals looking to work elsewhere. What roles can be looked at as stepping stones toward this? And then it says, I feel like you covered this, so thank you. So it's answered. Thank you. Is there anything you want to add to that, David? It looks like anything you want to add?
I think there's different starting points, right? I've seen SDRs turn into RevOps people. I've seen Salesforce and HubSpot admins, CRM specific users turn into RevOps, leaders. I've seen analysts, which, by the way, the analyst piece, I want to hone in on that. That is most of what I'm seeing is an analyst rising up to that strategic role. So I want to make that note. So keep that in mind.
Perfect, guys. There's a lot of other questions. I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to Ari, and I promise we'll answer every one of these questions, and then Ari, your team will be able to get it to everybody afterwards. So I'll pass it back over to you, Ari.
Yeah, I appreciate it, Matt. I want to give a huge shout out and a thank you to David and Matt for running a really interesting discussion, both kind of higher level, but also you both gave really good practical tips about how to think about these concepts. So thank you both for that. We will follow up with the slides and the recording afterwards for folks who want to review. We will answer the questions on the Ops community, on the HubSpot community, where you can also, as you already know, find some amazing other content, including additional events coming up with these guys here. And we appreciate you. Have a good rest of your Wednesday. Have a good rest of the week, and we will be in touch. Thank you.
Stay awesome. Keep doing it big. Adios.
Bye, everyone.